In the kingdom of Carvalon, light is everything. Our spires are built from sunstone, and our lineage is measured by the brilliance of the solar flare within one's soul. For centuries, the royal family has maintained the great aegis, a golden dome of pure energy that protects our borders from the weeping shadows of the outlands. 6 years ago, Sapphira, the crown princess and the love of my life, was struck by the eclipse rot. It is a curse that turns the blood to ink and the soul to ash. The healers gave up. The high priests wept. I was Calix, the archmage of the solar circle. I possessed the primal flare, a spark of divinity that appears once in a millennium. To save her, I did what no mage had ever dared. I performed a forbidden ritual. I transferred my entire solar core to Sapphira. I didn't just heal her, I gave her my spark. I poured my divinity, my youth, and my magic into her veins until the rot was burned away. The cost? I became what they call hollow. My golden hair turned the color of winter fog. My strength withered. To the world, I became a magicless peasant, a husk who survived only by the queen's mercy. I spent my days in the royal gardens, while the nobility of Carvalon practiced their light weaving in the upper tiers. I knelt in the dirt, tending to the solace lilies. These flowers were the only things that still responded to my touch, perhaps because they too knew what it was like to be forgotten when the sun went down. "You're late with the bloom water, Calix." I didn't look up. The voice belonged to Commander Malachor, a man who had risen to power the moment I fell from it. He wore armor forged from sunglass, glowing with a borrowed radiance that used to be mine. "The lilies require patience, Commander," I said, my voice thin and raspy. "Patience is for the weak," Malachor sneered, stepping on a budding flower with his heavy boot. "Carvalon is entering a new age. Queen Sapphira has expanded our borders. She needs warriors of fire, not gardeners who smell of compost. You're an eyesore on this terrace." I looked at the crushed lily. I felt a familiar ache in my chest, not of magic, but of the connection I still held to the queen. Somewhere deep in her soul, my spark was screaming, but she had learned to tune out the noise. That night, the palace was a sea of gold and fire. It was the anniversary of Sapphira's coronation. She sat upon the sun throne, radiant, her eyes glowing with the golden power I had gifted her. She looked like a goddess walked among men. I sat at the very edge of the feast, near the servants' entrance. I wore a simple tunic of gray wool. I was the quiet consort, the man the court whispered about in hushed, mocking tones. "Did you hear? He used to be the archmage. Now he can't even light a candle. Why does she keep him around? He's a blemish on her glory." Sapphira stood up, and the room fell into a worshipful silence. "People of Carvalon," Sapphira began, her voice carrying the resonance of a thunderclap. "Our kingdom has never been brighter, but to lead you into the great expansion, the throne must be a symbol of absolute strength. A queen cannot lead alone, nor can she be tethered to the past." She looked at me. There was no warmth in her eyes. There was only the cold, hard logic of a woman who had forgotten the price of her life. "Calix," she said. The room grew cold. "You served your purpose in a time of darkness, but Carvalon needs a king who can wield the aegis. You are hollow. You are a man of shadows in a kingdom of light. I am dissolving our bond. Commander Malachor will take the seat beside me." Malachor stepped forward, his armor flaring with a violent, arrogant heat. The court erupted in cheers. They saw a power couple, They saw a legendary match. I stood up. I didn't shout, I didn't plead. I simply looked at the woman I died for, spiritually and magically. "Sapphira," I said, my voice barely audible over the cheers. "The spark I gave you, it isn't a weapon, it is a responsibility. Without a grounded soul to anchor it, the fire will eventually turn on the hearth." She laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "You speak of magic you no longer possess, Calix. You are jealous of the fire you lost. Guards, see the former consort to the gates. He is to be stripped of his residence and exiled to the gray frontier." The guards, men I had once trained, grabbed my arms. They dragged me through the hall, past the nobles who turned their backs, past the woman who wore my soul like a piece of jewelry. As they threw me out into the cold, rainy night of the lower city, I felt a sharp, agonizing tear in the center of my being. The bond was severed. In that moment, a massive crack appeared in the great aegis above the city. The sky bled a dark, sickly purple for a split second before the shield stabilized. The court didn't notice. They were too busy toasting to their new king. But as I walked into the rain, I felt the first breath of the eclipse rot returning to the air. The fire was no longer grounded, and the eternal queen was about to find out exactly how much of her strength was actually mine. Exile is not just a place, it is a silence. I settled in the gray frontier, a village where the sun was always muffled by a permanent mist. Here, the people didn't care for solar flares or high-tier politics. They were loggers and shepherds who lived by the strength of their backs. I lived in a small stone hut at the edge of the woods, where I spent my days brewing medicinal teas and tending to a small patch of earth. Without my magic, my body felt heavy, like a suit of armor I could no longer take off, but my mind was finally clear. For 6 years, my thoughts had been occupied by the constant, agonizing task of stabilizing Sapphira. People think that when I gave her my primal flare, the job was done. They didn't understand the physics of divinity. A mortal body cannot hold the fire of a star without a ground. I was that ground. Every night while she slept, I would hold her hand and draw the excess heat into my own marrow, burning myself from the inside out so she could remain perfect and radiant. Now she was finally free of me, and the fire was finally free of its anchor. Back in Carvalon, the celebration of the new king consort was beginning to sour. It started during the blessing of the harvest. Sapphira stood before her people, her hands raised to cast the golden glow that would ripen the fields for miles. Normally, the light was a steady, warm amber, but as she channeled the power, the light turned a violent, jagged crimson. "My queen," Malachor whispered, standing behind her in his polished armor. "The light, it looks different today." "It's just the atmospheric pressure," Sapphira snapped, her voice tight with a pain she didn't want to admit. As the crimson light hit the fields, the crops didn't ripen, they withered. The stalks turned to black glass and shattered. A gasp rippled through the thousands of gathered citizens. This was unheard of. The queen's touch was supposed to be life itself. Sapphira clutched her chest, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. The primal flare inside her was growing hot, too hot. Without me there to siphon off the excess spiritual waste, the power was beginning to cook her from within. In the royal war room, Malachor was pacing like a caged animal. Reports were coming in from the borders. The great aegis, the shield I had maintained with my own life force, was filtering. "The shield is failing, Malachor. the high priest shouted. "The shadows are crawling through the gaps in the north. We need the queen to reinforce the barrier." "She's resting," Malachor barked. "She's had a minor exhaustion. I will lead the solar guard myself. My flame is more than enough to hold the line." Malachor rode to the north with 300 men. He arrived at the breach, his armor glowing with the borrowed light Sapphira had gifted him. He raised his sword, screaming a battle cry that was more ego than substance. He tried to weave the light into a wall, but the light wouldn't obey him. Magic isn't just a battery, it's a language, and Malachor only knew how to shout. The shield didn't grow stronger, it shattered under his touch. The shadows poured through, and Malachor, the force of nature Sapphira had chosen, was the first to turn his horse and flee, leaving his men to be swallowed by the dark. That evening, the palace felt like a furnace. Sapphira lay on her silk sheets, her skin glowing with a feverish, unnatural light. Her veins looked like threads of molten gold beneath her skin. "Where is Malachor?" Sapphira gasped as her handmaidens pressed cold towels to her forehead. He has retreated to the inner sanctum, my queen," the handmaid whispered. "He says the infection of the Aegis is too dangerous to approach right now." Sapphira closed her eyes. She thought of me. She remembered the nights I used to sit by her bed, the way the fever would always break the moment I touched her hand. She had thought I was just comforting her. She had thought I was just a magicless husband providing emotional support. She reached out with her mind, trying to find the ground she had always relied on. But there was nothing, only a cold, empty void where I used to be. "I gave him everything," she whispered to the empty room. "I gave him the title, the glory, the power. Why can't he fix this?" "You can give a man a sword, but you cannot give him the strength to swing it. And you can give a woman the sun, but if she kills the man who holds the world steady, she will eventually be burned by her own light." By the end of the week, the kingdom of Carvalon was in a state of emergency. The unmatched duo of Sapphira and Malachor had become a joke in the lower tiers. The people were whispering about the gray archmage who had vanished. Sapphira summoned her fastest messengers. "Find him," she ordered, her voice trembling with agony. "Go to the gray frontier. Go to the ends of the world if you must. Tell Calix. Tell him the kingdom needs him. Tell him I need him." "And if he refuses, my queen?" the messenger asked. Sapphira looked at her hands. The skin was starting to crack, golden light leaking from the fissures. "Tell him that if he doesn't come back, there will be no kingdom left to rule." But as the messengers rode out, I was miles away, sitting by a stream in the gray frontier. For the first time in 6 years, my skin didn't burn. My heart beat with its own rhythm. I looked at the water. I wasn't the archmage of Carvalon anymore. I was just Calix, and the world was finally quiet. The gray frontier was a place where the air felt like damp wool and the earth tasted of iron. It was honest. It didn't pretend to be golden or divine. It was just real. I was finishing the harvest of the moon root when I heard the thunder of hooves. It wasn't the sound of workhorses. It was the rhythmic, arrogant beat of the Royal Solar Cavalry. 3 riders pulled up to my small stone hut. They wore the golden cloaks of the High Guard, but the fabric was stained with soot and the horses were lathered in foam. They looked like men fleeing a nightmare. "Calix!" the lead rider shouted, not bothering to dismount. "By order of Queen Sapphira, you are summoned back to the Sun Throne. The northern Aegis has collapsed and the Queen is indisposed. You are to return immediately to repair the spiritual conduits." I didn't look up from my roots. I brushed the soil off a small, gnarled tuber. "I am no longer an archmage, Captain. I am a gardener, and as the Queen herself stated, I am hollow. A man with no flame cannot repair a sunstone conduit." "This is not a request," the captain roared, drawing his sword. The blade flickered with a weak, dying light. "The kingdom is burning. The force of nature she chose, Commander Malachor, has barricaded himself in the inner sanctum. The people are screaming for a savior." I stood up slowly. My joints popped, the lingering price of the ritual. Then let them scream for the man they cheered for at the banquet. Let them ask Malachor to be their savior. I am busy with my garden. The captain's bravado broke. He fell from his horse, not out of aggression, but out of exhaustion. "Please," he whispered, his face etched with terror. "The Queen, she is not just sick, she is glowing like a dying star. The palace walls are melting where she touches them. If you don't come, there won't be a Carvalon left to save." "Then let it burn," I said coldly as the mountain mist. "She wanted to be a goddess without a ground. Now she gets to feel the heat." 3 days later, the sun came to the mud. I was sitting on my porch, drinking a tea of bitter herbs to soothe my aching bones, when a single carriage appeared on the horizon. It wasn't the ornate gold-leafed carriage of the state. It was a heavy, iron-bound transport used for prisoners or plague victims. The door opened, and a woman stepped out. It was Sapphira, but it was not the creative luminary of the solar circle I had married. She was wrapped in heavy, enchanted lead cloth to dampen the light leaking from her skin. Her eyes were no longer blue. They were two pits of swirling, violent gold. Every step she took left a scorched footprint in the wet grass. The air around her shimmered with a heat that made my lungs ache. She looked at my small, humble hut. She looked at my gray hair and my calloused hands. "Calix," she gasped. The sound of her voice was like the crackling of a forest fire. "My queen," I said, sitting still. I didn't bow. I didn't offer her a seat. I can't breathe," she sobbed, clutching her chest. "The flare, it's growing. It's eating my memories. It's eating my soul. Malachor tried to channel it. He tried to take some of it for himself, but it burned his hands off. He fled to the southern islands this morning." "The force of nature had a short season, it seems," I said, taking a sip of my tea. Sapphira fell to her knees in the dirt. The damp earth hissed and turned to steam beneath her. "I was wrong," she choked out. "I thought the power was mine. I thought the light belonged to the person wearing the crown. I didn't realize that I was just the wick and you were the oil. Please, Calix, ground me. Take it back. I'll give you the throne. I'll tell the world the truth." "I don't want the throne, Sapphira. I never did. I gave you my divinity because I loved the woman who used to pick wildflowers in the valley. But that woman died the moment she started believing her own legends." I stood up and walked to the edge of the porch, looking down at her. "You called me dead weight in front of the entire court. You told the people I was a reminder of weakness. But the only thing I was your anchor. I was the one who felt the burn so you could feel the glory. You wanted to see what it was like to be a star? This is it. Stars burn until there is nothing left but ash." "Don't let me die like this," she pleaded, her skin starting to crack, revealing the white-hot divinity beneath. "I'm the Queen of Carvalon." "No," I said softly, "you are a vessel that broke the only hand that knew how to carry it." I walked back into my hut and emerged with a small obsidian bowl. It was a void catcher, an ancient tool used to drain excess magic. "I can save your life, Sapphira," I said, "but I won't save your kingdom, and I won't save your pride." "Anything," she whispered, the light now blinding. "Just make the pain stop." "I will drain the primal flare. I will take back the gift I gave you, but without it, you will no longer be the eternal queen. You will be as hollow as you claimed I was. You will be a common woman, aging and mortal, in a kingdom that only respects power. Your people will look at you and see exactly what you saw in me, an embarrassment." She looked up at me, the gold in her eyes flickering with a desperate terror. She realized the trade. She could die as a goddess or live as a peasant. "Do it," she hissed. I reached out and touched her forehead. The heat was immense, enough to sear my skin, but I didn't flinch. For 6 years I had been the ground. I knew how to handle the fire. As I began to draw the light back into the obsidian bowl, the great aegis over the distant city of Carvalon finally shattered. The shadows of the outlands rushed in, swallowing the golden spires in a sea of purple mist. The era of the sun was over. The era of the truth had begun. Carvalon did not fall to an invading army. It fell to its own weight. When the great aegis shattered, the sun kings and creative titans of the upper tiers found that their glass spires could not withstand the gravity of the earth. The shadows didn't kill them, they simply stripped away the illusion. Within months, the floating spires had been abandoned. The nobility, now hollow like the rest of the world, were forced to descend into the mud. In the gray frontier, the village had grown. It was no longer a place of exile, but a sanctuary. And at the heart of that sanctuary was a small, thriving clinic and garden. Sapphira lived in a shack at the edge of the village. It was a sturdy enough structure, built by the very peasants she once looked down upon, but to her it was a prison. I watched her from my porch. She was scrubbing laundry in a wooden basin, her hands red and chapped from the cold water. There was no golden glow in her veins. Her hair had lost its luster, turning a mundane human blonde. She looked like what she was, a woman who had spent her entire life being a force of nature, only to realize she didn't know how to be a human being. She looked up and saw me. I was preparing a shipment of healing tinctures. "Calix," she called out, her voice no longer a thunderclap but a tired rasp. She walked over, wiping her wet hands on a coarse apron. "The village council says we need more of the fever balm. The children in the lower barracks are shivering." "I'll have it ready by sunset, Sapphira," I said, not pausing my work. She stood there for a moment, lingering in the space between us. "I saw Malachor yesterday," she whispered. "He was in the marketplace, begging for scraps. He tried to tell the merchants he was a hero of the North. They laughed at him. One of them threw a rotten turnip at his head." "The world has a short memory for titans who run when the lights go out," I replied. "You don't even look at me anymore," she said, a flash of the old arrogant Sapphira flickering in her eyes. "I am the woman you gave your soul to. I am the woman who wore your crown." "No," I said, finally looking up. "You are a woman who traded a soul for a crown and then lost both. I am looking at exactly what is left." As Sapphira stood there, a woman stepped out from my clinic. Her name was Elowin. She was the village herbalist, a woman whose magic was not of the sun, but of the earth, quiet, resilient, and nurturing. She didn't have a primal flair. She had never been featured in the royal tapestries. She walked over to me, placing a hand on my shoulder with a familiarity that made Sapphira's breath hitch. "The tinctures are bottled, Calix," Elowin said, her voice like a calm stream. She looked at Sapphira and gave a polite, albeit distant, nod. Shall I start on the poultices for the elders?" "Please," I said, a small, genuine smile touching my lips. Elwyn didn't see me as a hollow archmage. She didn't see me as a silent shield. She saw me as the man who knew which roots cured a cough and which stories made the winter nights feel shorter. She loved the man I was when I had nothing left to give but myself. Sapphira watched us. She saw the way I looked at Elwyn, the way I never looked at Sapphira, even when we were at the height of our power. When I was with Sapphira, I was always performing, always stabilizing, always serving. With Elwyn, I was simply Calix. "Is this it?" Sapphira asked, her voice trembling with a new kind of pain. "You replaced a queen with a root gatherer?" Elwyn didn't take the bait. She simply looked at Sapphira with a profound sense of pity. "Calix didn't replace a queen, Sapphira. He finally found a partner. There's a difference." Sapphira turned and walked back to her laundry basin, her shoulders hunched. She realized that the magicless peasant she had exiled hadn't just taken her power back, he had taken the only thing that actually made him valuable: his heart. The sun began to set over the gray frontier. It wasn't a magical, eternal sun. It was a real one, casting long, honest shadows over the world. The most devastating form of revenge is not to destroy what someone has, but to show them exactly what they could have had if they had been capable of seeing the treasure when it was in their hands. I sat on my porch with Elwyn, watching the stars come out. They weren't the stars of Carvalon's old prophecies. They were just points of light in a vast, dark sky. "Are you happy, Calix?" Elwyn asked, resting her head on my shoulder. "I am at peace," I said. "And in this world, Elwyn, peace is the only magic that actually lasts." In the distance, I could hear the sound of Sapphira's wooden basin splashing in the dark. She was still scrubbing, still trying to wash the stains of a fallen kingdom off her hands. But some stains don't come out with soap. They only fade when you finally admit who actually held the torch. Time in the gray frontier did not flow like the frantic currents of the palace. It settled like silt at the bottom of a clear lake. 3 years had passed since the great Aegis had vanished, and the world had learned a hard truth. The sun still rises, even if there is no queen to command it. The village had become a bustling hub of trade and healing. We didn't have gold spires, but we had warm hearths. We didn't have magic woven tapestries, but we had the laughter of children who grew up knowing that a man's worth was in his hands, not his flair. One winter morning, a broken man wandered into the village square. His armor was gone, replaced by rags that barely warded off the frost. His hands were gnarled, blackened stumps, the permanent mark of the divine backfire he had suffered when he tried to steal the flare from Sapphira. It was Malachor. He stood in the center of the market, his eyes glazed. He tried to tell a group of young travelers that he was the protector of the North, but his voice was a pathetic wheeze. People walked around him as if he were a ghost. There is no creature more invisible than a titan who has lost his stage. I saw him as I was walking with Elwyn. I felt no anger, only a strange, distant curiosity. "Do you want to speak to him?" Elwyn asked, her hand intertwined with mine. "No," I said, watching as a merchant gave Malachor a piece of stale bread out of pity. "He is exactly where his character led him. A man who lives for the reflection in the mirror has nothing when the glass breaks." A week later, Elwyn and I stood beneath the great oak at the edge of the forest. There were no high priests, no star-steel crowns, and no forced cheering. Only the villagers, the scent of pine, and a simple vow. I placed a ring on her finger, not of sunglass, but of hammered silver I had polished myself. "I have no divinity to give you, Elowen," I whispered as the village elder prepared to bless us. "I have no throne to offer." "Calix," she smiled, and her eyes held more light than the solar core ever did. "I don't need a god, I just need the man who knows how to stay when the winter comes." As we turned to face the small crowd, I saw a lone figure standing on a hill in the distance. It was Sapphira. She was dressed in the simple wool of a laundress. She didn't come close. She stood there, silhouetted against the setting sun, watching the man she called Hollow begin a life of absolute fullness. She stayed until the last of the light faded, a silent witness to the happiness she had traded for a vanity that was now ash. That night, as the village celebrated with cider and song, I sat on my porch with Elowen. The world felt solid beneath me. Sapphira had come to my door one final time before the ceremony. She hadn't come to beg or to scream. She had come to ask a single question. "How do you do it, Calix? How do you live without the fire? How do you stand being ordinary?" I looked at her, and for the first time I felt the debt was truly settled. "I am not ordinary, Sapphira," I had told her. "I am free. You were the one who was ordinary. You were just a girl who thought a crown made you a sun. I was the one who kept the sun from burning you. Now I'm just keeping myself warm." She hadn't answered. She had simply walked back to her shack, her footsteps heavy in the mud. I looked up at the night sky. The stars were bright and cold. Without the artificial glow of the Aegis, the universe looked much larger, much more terrifying, and infinitely more beautiful. Carvalon was gone. The Sun Kings were forgotten, but the herbs were growing, the sick were healing, and for the first time in my life, my soul didn't ache. A crown is a heavy thing that only a few can wear, but a home is a light thing that anyone can build. When you cast out the person who carried your light, don't be surprised when you find yourself lost in the dark, watching from the shadows as they find a new light that you can never touch. I took Elowen's hand and walked back inside, closing the door on the ghosts of the past. The fire in the hearth was small, but it was real, and that was more than enough.
Thank you for sharing this chapter with us at Velvet Chapters Brew. Comment, like, and subscribe to see where the next page takes us.